Ave Miras Setall by Guillaume Dufay. Ave Miras Setall has a Latin title, but in fact you can determine the meanings of at least two words in that title. Take a look at Maris. It looks like the beginning of the word marine, and it means of the sea, and Stella looks like the beginning of the word stellar, and it means star. Ave Miras Setall therefore means Hail, O star of the sea. Although such a title, one addressed to a thing, might not seem to be so, this is a sacred composition. In fact, it is a hymn to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is usually referred to as the Blessed Virgin or the Blessed Virgin Mary in scholarly writings on music, art, etc. This composition is a hymn, and we often associate hymns with a religious setting. However, hymns can be both sacred and secular. In general, hymns are songs of praise, and they are not necessarily sacred, nor are they necessarily addressed to a god. For example, our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, is a hymn of praise to the flag. We do not worship the flag, but in fact it is praised in this particular hymn. Although hymns are a staple of Christian church music these days, hymns were not sung at Mass during the Renaissance. In fact, they were always reserved for those other services that were celebrated throughout the day. We called those services offices. Religious hymns of early times, therefore, were reserved for use in the offices. The Dufay work that we are about to examine is based on a pre-existing melody, and I want to make it clear to you that the melody and the composition had separate and distant origins. Indeed, the Ave Miras Setall hymn melody was written many years before the time of Dufay. It is a medieval melody. It is monophonic. It is unmeasured, and it was not composed by Dufay. With that in mind, we are ready to examine the actual work by Dufay, and in terms of its actual genre, this is a harmonized hymn. The pre-existing monophonic melody was a hymn. This composition by Dufay is a harmonized hymn. You have doubtless heard the words harmonized and harmonization from practical musicians, and any practical musician could probably give you a very good description of what the process is. Technically, however, a harmonization consists of adding new melodies to be sung or played with an existing melody. Dufay's harmonization of the medieval hymn Ave Miras Setall, therefore, is basically an elaboration of a monophonic, unmeasured medieval melody. Basically, the Dufay harmonized hymn fits the description that I've given to you earlier of such compositions. It has the existing melody in the top voice, and new melodies were written to be sung below it. In terms of texture, this is a polyphonic composition, but it is a special type of polyphony. Let's take this opportunity to review the words that we have to describe musical textures, and let's do so by comparing the noun and the adjective names for these words. Use the table that you see above your podcast screen to compare the word forms of these musical textures, or copy a table of that sort into your notes. In one column, write the nouns, and in the other column, write the adjectives. The first musical texture described to you in this course is monophony, and monophonic is the adjectival form of the word. Notice the difference in pronunciation. Monophony, monophonic. The accent is on the second syllable in the noun form and on the third syllable in the adjectival form. Monophony, monophonic. We then proceeded to a consideration of polyphony, and its adjectival form is polyphonic. Notice that it fits the pattern that we saw earlier. polyphony, polyphonic. That is, the accent on the second syllable for the noun and on the third syllable for the adjective. Polyphony, polyphonic. The Dufay harmonized hymn provides us with a clear example of homophony, or in the adjectival form, a homophonic texture. Again, notice that these two words fit the pattern. Homophony, homophonic, accent on the second syllable for the noun form and the accent on the third syllable for the adjectival form. Homophony, homophonic. Homophony is a special type of polyphony, and we shall examine quite a number of species of polyphony in this course. Let's examine the stems of this word. The word homophonic comes from Greek stems, and you already know what the second of these stems, P-H-O-N, means. It means sound. The first stem means same. Taken together, therefore, homophonic or homophony refers to the same sound. Now, the literal meaning, same sound, may seem a bit enigmatic because it doesn't seem to be too much different from one sound, but in fact there is a big difference. Homophony is a polyphonic texture, which means that there is more than one sound going on at the same time, but the way they interact with each other tends to produce something that sounds something different from independent melodies being sung at the same time. In fact, in a homophonic texture, all the voices move at more or less the same time. And this is the texture that you have in those hymns that you find in those thick hymnals you find in churches. If you were to examine the music in them, you would see that they all have 3 or 4 melodies, and that all 3 or 4 voices move at more or less the same time. In a composition in which all the voices move more or less at the same time, the voices lose their individual identity, and they thus seem to be producing or contributing to one and the same sound.